Welcome to Accountable, where your business is our business. Hosted by David R. Peters.
Welcome to Accountable, the podcast for CFOs by a CFO. Hey, my name's Dave. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Hey, I know that for a lot of us, we are achievers. I think that for the folks that are in the accounting industry, if you're a finance professional, most of the finance professionals that I talk to, they are achievers. They want to go out, they want to achieve great things, they want to do great things. And really what that gets into is goal setting. And that is going to be our topic for today. And my goodness, we have a great guest, Jennifer Elder, who seemingly does everything. So, she is the senior solutions consultant for the AICPA. She is the owner of the Sustainable CFO. She's a board member of the New Hampshire Board of Accountancy. She is an author. The list goes on and on. So our guest this week, Jennifer Elder. Jennifer, thank you so much for being on Accountable.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Jennifer, we have a big topic today, one that you and I think, could probably talk about for, probably several days. But we're going to see what we can do in a little bit shorter time period than that. Talking about goal setting. Goal setting, again, for us finance people, we tend to be achievers. We tend to like to cross things off the list. But yet, there's times where our goal setting kind of goes awry. So can you talk about why our goal setting goes awry?
Sure. There are a couple of issues, I think, that are actually pretty easy to deal with once you know what they are, which is sometimes we set a goal that's way too big. That big, hairy, audacious goal, I want to achieve, ta-da, this.
Right.
And we can think about those of us who sat the CPA exam or sat the CMA exam or any other big exam. That's a big goal way up here. And if you keep focusing on that huge goal, you might start thinking, I don't know if I can get there. And so we procrastinate. We'll put it off because it just seems like it's too hard. So the easy way of dealing with that is to look at this big, awesome goal, like climbing Mount Everest, but then do what my dad said, which is you can climb Mount Everest one molehill at a time. So if we look at that big exam, it's like, okay, how about the first step is we register for it or we buy the review materials and just break it down into a series of steps. So the big goal of getting that certification is more your vision of the future. That's your end state, but it's not a step. It's the result of a whole series of steps. So whatever that big, awesome goal is, that's the end goal. But we want those little steps in between to get there.
So I think you said a couple of pretty interesting things there, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it. And I also want to kind of highlight some of these a little bit too, because I think that the first thing that I hear you saying is that sometimes it's possible for us to set too big of a goal. And I also think that, your wording was interesting there because I think you separated a vision from a goal. Is that right?
Yes.
Talk more about that. What exactly is the difference then between a vision and a goal?
to me, and this may be just my personal viewpoint, is the vision is your end state.
Okay.
When you have succeeded, what would that look like? To me, the goals are the individual steps, the things that you can write down on your to-do list and check it off. But you can't just check off passing a major exam. There are a lot of things that have to happen in between. So to me, that's when goals go awry, is that we're thinking about an end state, a vision, versus what's the next step I have to take.
So the problem is not necessarily having a vision. The problem is that we try to sort of, as my grandmother would say, bite off more than we can chew.
Exactly.
Is that accurate?
That is exactly it. The vision is, you want that vision. We need something to look forward to. But we need to break down the steps to get there. And the benefit, many people in finance, we love our to-do list because we can cross something off. And part of the reason we like that is because when you actually do cross something off or you delete it from your Excel list, you get a little bump of dopamine in your brain. And that's happy juice. And it's also addicting. Your brain likes more happy juice. So when we can break things down into little steps, you get to cross it off and you go, yay, not only am I making progress, but I feel good about making progress.
I used to absolutely love, I distinctly remember being in high school where I would be writing things down on my to-do list kind of at the beginning of the day. I used to love it when I would, my head would hit the pillow at night and I would cross that last thing off.
Yeah.
It was just, there was something very satisfying about that. I'm not sure that all my friends were necessarily, as excited about that as I was, but my goodness, it meant something to me.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing, you reminded me of actually a piece of my to-do list that I use today, which is, it's called the 1-3-5. And it's just a piece of paper with 1, 3, and then 5 lines. And you can use this when you're trying to achieve big goals, is that the 1 is what's the big thing you have to do, something that's going to take a lot of time. The 3 are what are 3 medium-sized tasks related to your goal. And the 5 would be 5 little things that when you had 5 minutes here or 10 minutes here, what could you do? So, for example, if I go back to studying for a big exam, my big goal may be I need to read a chapter. Mm-hmm. That's going to take up some time. Maybe my medium goals, one of them might be to review something I've already done before, or revisit an area that I struggled with. Not a whole section, but just these are smaller things that might take 30 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that. And then the 5 small would be, maybe there's one question that it's kicking your butt every time. So let's go back and visit that. Or if you're one of those people who uses flashcards to study, 10-minute goal is review your flashcards.
So the quick tasks are in the 5 bucket.
Right. 5 to 10 minutes.
5 to 10 minutes. Okay. And then we have so anything that's longer than that is going to be in the 1 or the 3.
Yeah. The 3 is probably 30 minutes to an hour.
Okay, so 3 is kind of 30 minutes to an hour. And then when we get into the one that's going to really eat up some time, That's your one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you go through this? I mean, do you do this every day where you actually have kind of your 1, 3, and 5 every day? Is that right?
I do. So I have that every day. I start, and again, just a little piece of paper here because I'm very visual, and I also enjoy crumpling this up at the end of the day.
Yes.
But I found it's very good to help me get through what I need to for the day. But it's also really good when I have a large goal that I'm trying to accomplish. Sometimes you may have experienced this too, David, where there's something on your to-do list that keeps staying on your to-do list.
Yeah, for sure.
You just can't get around to it. Maybe it's too big. Maybe it's something that isn't easy for you. It annoys you. If you break it down into that 1, 3, 5, suddenly you start to make progress. And for that thing that sits on the bottom of your to-do list, you're probably going to start with one of the 5.
Yeah.
Just to get started. But again, when you get to cross it off, you get that little bump of dopamine and you're like, okay, let me do another one.
Right.
And so you see the progress. I find that not only is there that neuroscience thing, but there's also the visual.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like not-for-profits when they're raising money, they use that thermometer.
Right.
There's a reason why they do that. Because success breeds success. When you see progress, you want more progress. And as human beings, we're the same way.
So let me ask you something, because, we have a lot of finance professionals that listen to this, CPAs, financial advisors, CFOs, and even a lot of small business kind of entrepreneurial type of folks. I mean, so do we have a problem with goal setting in the finance world? I mean, is there an issue that we just have? Is there something in our wiring that makes us so that we just have an issue with setting goals and following through?
I was going to say no, but then part of me also says yes.
Yeah.
Because I think it really goes back to that difference between a goal and a vision.
Right.
And those of us in accounting and finance, we're very detail oriented. That's why we went into this profession. And when you have a monster goal, there's no detail.
Yeah.
It's warm and fuzzy. And it's typically way off in the future. So if we break it down into individual steps, and almost all of us have heard about setting goals that are SMART.
Right.
Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. There's a reason why we keep coming back to that, because it works. And to me, that's also the difference between a vision and a goal. Is that it's really hard to make a vision SMART, but I can make the goal SMART. The other thing I think that happens to pretty much everybody, not just those of us in finance, is that as we're growing up, people are constantly asking us about our next goal. You're in junior high. What sport are you going to go out for in high school? You're in high school. Where are you going to go to college? What are you going to study? In college, it's now, are you going to get a master's degree? Where are you going to work? Personally, it's, are we going to buy a house, buy a new car, get married? Any of those. But there are always these goals. And then suddenly you get out of college and you go into the workplace, and it seems like the goals come to a grinding halt. So I think we get out of the habit of setting goals sometimes, because there's nobody in my ear asking that question.
You just go through the motions. You get into the working world, and you have your day, and then you have the next day, and then you have the day after that. And there's no really kind of push to get to the next step.
Right. And
Is
there's
that
no
right?
accountability.
There it is.
That
Yeah.
other people are not asking you, what are you going to do next?
I think it's also funny, too, that, it seems to me that a lot of times we derive some of our meaning and identity in what we do, right? I mean, it was pointed out to me, and I by a friend of mine that, one of the first questions that you always ask somebody whenever you first meet them is what do you do?
And we immediately
Right?
answer what we do for work.
Bingo. Yeah.
We don't answer what we do outside of work, whether we have
Right.
a family, we're raising children, we ski, we go hiking, whatever it is. We immediately answer with work.
Right. And yeah, I mean, and I think especially, once you get into the working world, maybe that's a part of this too, is that you almost kind of lose, kind of part of you because there's no kind of next thing. I think it's really easy for us to kind of get, into a routine where we're not necessarily, kind of going, to the next thing. We're not necessarily looking for the next step. And maybe that, at least on some level, kind of brings us down.
It does. And that is actually one form of burnout. So we often think about burnout as being overloaded. We have too much work to do. But there is a form of burnout that comes about when you're not challenged enough.
Right.
And you're just going through the motions and there's no meaning to your life. There's no next thing. I was talking with a friend of mine who spent the better part of 10 years going to school, between getting her bachelor's degree, a master's, a PhD, having to do an internship. And I guess it was about a month ago, we were talking and she was saying, you know what? I asked her how she was doing, how job was. It's okay. I said, what's going on? She said, no, it's fine. And there's a word, is nothing is fine when somebody says it's fine. And we were talking through it and realized that for the majority of her life, there's always been another goal. And now she didn't have one. And she was kind of languishing. Nothing was bad, but nothing was great either. And she realized, you know what, I really do need to set another goal. And, again, it's thinking about at certain stages in our life, other people will ask us about our goals. And then you get out of school, you go to work, and nobody else is asking anymore. So there's no prompting for us to continue developing ourselves. And that's part of what goals are great for, is to say, how do I make myself better? What would I enjoy?
This is kind of an odd connection, but I one of the things that I did was after I was working for a few years, I decided to go back and get an MBA. And I had a lot of people that asked me about it because I had already been to graduate school, actually, at that point, a couple of times. And people were like, well, why do you want to do this again? And it was exactly what you're talking about, is that it wasn't that anything was bad. I mean, I was working, a job. I was getting paid pretty well. And, there was nothing necessarily wrong, but I just felt stuck in a rut. I mean, I was just not, I didn't feel like I was progressing. I didn't really feel like I was, I wasn't looking forward to kind of the next thing. And a lot of it was, I didn't have a mountain to climb.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
And I think a lot of times, and for a lot of the folks that are listening out there, you might have people that you're managing, and people that you are leading within your firm, within your company. And I think it's important to remember that when you are working with them, help people who, especially folks that are kind of first out of school, they're adjusting and everything. Help them to set goals. I mean, help them to, progress to the next thing. Help them to look forward to what's new and what is going to help them expand. I think that that's also something that's important as well. Jennifer, any tips for...
And before we go on, I want to add something to that comment is that, yes, it's hugely important for us to assist other people achieve their goals. And this is another time or another way that goals can go wrong, is when somebody else sets them for us. It's not mine. So I don't really have that same investment in it. So sometimes I find when in the workplace and with teams, if you're setting goals for somebody else, if you think they are the right goal and they don't, they're not going to work towards it. So it's almost, I always liked when I was supervising people to say, what would you like your goals to be for the next year? Let them start. Now, I don't always, bless every goal that they've decided they want to do, but we can find kind of a meeting in the middle of where something they would like to learn that would help the team overall.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because what happens if you've supervised people, I've supervised people. What happens if they don't want to set their own goals? So they just kind of they go through the motions because you're the supervisor and you asked me to do this, so therefore I'm going to do it. But you can kind of tell that they're not really putting in a whole lot of effort and thought into it. I think that there's certain folks that, they're self-motivated. Frankly, I mean, if you say, hey, what do you goals want to be? They're going to tell you, the things that they want to achieve and that's going to kind of be that. But then there's this other group that I think is maybe a little bit more, I don't know if the right word is passive, but is maybe just not as, inclined to kind of just, be the, to set those goals kind of on their own.
It could be that they've had bad experiences in the past.
Right.
And it could be at a prior job, they were held accountable to goals that weren't achievable. So they're a little hesitant, or maybe they came from a very achievement-oriented family. And if they didn't achieve the goals, they get punished. So sometimes people are like, I don't want to go there, because if I set the goal, I'm giving you the ammunition to hurt me.
Yeah.
That I didn't achieve this goal, and I'm handing you the baseball bat that you are going to beat me with. So they don't want to do that. So with those people, then I'm likely to say, hey, based on my experience working with you, you were fabulous at these things, and I think you could take it to the next level if we worked on A, B, or C. Pick one. And I let them choose whether it's, if I need them to pick 3 goals, I might give them 6 and allow them to pick 3 that resonate with them so that there's some buy-in into the goal. Now, if they're still hesitant, and I've had that happen with one employee in particular, they're like, they're looking at these and they're going like, yeah, whatever. You just tell me what you want me to do.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, time out. Let's back up here. Because if none of these are of interest to you, I'm thinking that maybe this job is not of interest to you. And let's see what we can do about that. Now, it could be that I've done a bad job explaining the value of what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So, our organizations have a mission statement way up here. The department helps them achieve that, and then each individual employee is there. But sometimes we can't connect the dots.
Yeah.
To say, how does the accounting clerk help the organization achieve the mission? And without all human beings want to have meaning in their life. They want to know we've made a difference. So maybe I've done a bad job of explaining why what they do is important and why it matters. I may have also done a bad job in hiring. And I really didn't select the right person for the role. So maybe I've hired an accounting clerk who's an extrovert and needs to talk to people all day long. And now they're processing invoices and purely dealing with technology. So they're not happy. It could be that I hired the right person. Maybe I did explain why what they do matters. It could just be they're not interested anymore. But it doesn't do anybody any good to try and keep forcing them to move forward with something that they're not interested in.
I think that the comments that you made just there, I think that those are tough comments, right? I mean, I think all of us would like to believe, or at least I would like to believe, that that every hire that I've made is a good hire. I would love to believe that that the goals that that I put out in front of somebody that they're going to latch on to. But I think what you're saying here is that there are some times where it's just that's not somebody that you're necessarily going to move. It's not somebody that you're necessarily going to say the magic words and then all of a sudden they're going to be kind of self-motivated and ready to go. Sometimes there's a problem with the job, problems with the fit. Sometimes we've just, haven't articulated the vision right. And sometimes the best thing to do is to just kind of cut ties. Mm-hmm. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I prefer to call that coaching somebody out.
Yeah.
Where we say,
right,
this doesn't seem to be a good fit. Now, I don't pull the plug instantly on somebody. You have several conversations over why there are issues, they're not meeting their goals, what's going on. But I do think it's incumbent upon leaders in an organization to understand that when somebody is not working out in our company, there are two parties involved there. And the organization in some way, shape, or form has some responsibility for this error, which is why I prefer to coach somebody out rather than just say, this is not a good fit, goodbye.
Right.
And the amazing thing is when you have an honest conversation with somebody and say, you know what, I'm not sure that this is the right fit for you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't appear to be happy. We have issues with you meeting your goals. And I think that if you were really engaged, we wouldn't have these problems. Is that a fair assessment? Then we'll see what they say. I've had people just look at me and go, yes. And there's just this relief that, oh my gosh, she's right. And it may not have anything to do with me. They may like me, which is why they haven't said anything. But there's that sense of relief. I've also had people say, no, that's not the case. It's just there's this going on, there's that going on. I have issues at home, or, they're just things they haven't told you about. But either way, you get good information. And the amazing thing is when you go through that process of coaching somebody out and you say, this isn't a great fit, what can we do? A lot of times you might be able to find another position within the company. Other times it's time for them to leave. And if you help them, let me tell you, while they're still with you, they will give you 110%. So all of a sudden it's like, where did this person come from?
Mm-hmm.
But it's because they now have, I'll go back to what we started with. They now have a vision.
Yeah.
They have a vision for their future that motivates them. And now we have goals to get there. And they're willing to engage with those goals.
I think what you're saying is really interesting, because it would seem then that goal setting plays into workplace culture. Is that true? I mean, how does goal setting sort of fit into a bad workplace or a good workplace? I mean, how do those two things kind of mesh together?
Oh, the how do goals fit into a bad workplace? That's an easy one.
Yeah.
Those are, you will do this because I say so. The goals are probably set, the bar is set way too high, and we don't give people the resources to get it done. And we beat them up verbally when they don't meet their goals. So we set them outside. There's no motivation. There's no reason why you should do this. It's because I say so. But in a highly functioning organization, leaders are able to say, this is why I think this is a good goal for me or for the organization. And here's why it's good for you. So we find the WIFT. What's in it for them? Why should they want to do this? Because yes, it benefits me. It helps the organization meet their goals. If you want a finance department to shorten their close by 2 days, that's great for the organization. What's in it for me? As the employees. So we have to be able to communicate that. And instead of using the goals as a baseball bat, use them as sugar and candy. Cheer for people. Congratulations, you did that. That's wonderful. Do the happy dance, ring a bell, yell down the hallway, or send out an email to the entire team congratulating somebody. We all like to be patted on the back. And we will do more of what you pat me on the back for. But here, I'll share this example. When I tell somebody, don't do this, all I'm doing is getting them to focus on the wrong behavior.
Yeah.
Don't slack off. I need you to meet this goal. Well, all they hear is slacking off. And this is a negative thing. It's like me telling you, I don't want you to think about a purple, blue, and yellow striped dog. Do not think about a purple, yellow, and blue striped dog. Every one of us is imagining that dog when I told you not to.
Yeah, you just got all of our listeners to be thinking about that right now.
They're all doing that confused dog look. What does she mean, a purple, blue, and yellow dog? But if you focus on the positive and pat people on the back, we want success really does breed success.
I remember, especially being a manager, stepping into a management role for the first time. I've told some people about this. Sometimes when I've been speaking, I've talked about this as well. I was not a good manager when I started. I was just not. I don't think that I really understood, kind of what I was stepping into. And I was lucky enough to have a mentor who was my supervisor at the time, who pulled me aside and he goes, "You're too smart to be managing the way that you are." I that cut me. I mean, like at the time, I mean, that really cut me. I'm glad he said it, because it, kind of to your point, I basically changed two things. I mean, one of the things was I just started to say thank you for the things that, that people were doing just on a daily basis. And then I started asking the folks who were in my team, who I was supervising, how can I help you to get to where you need to be? Those were the only two changes, honestly, Jennifer, that I made.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it was a big turnaround, and we used to have an award back then. It was called the Top Banana Award. So it was a very interesting award name, but that's what we used to call it. And I actually won the Top Banana Award. So I went from I felt like being one of the worst managers, and all I did was make two changes, and it made a world of difference.
And especially the second one.
Right.
I mean, yes, saying thank you is very important, and we need to do more of that in the workplace. But the second one, when it comes to goals, is so important to say, how can I help you?
Right.
What do you need from me to achieve your goals? And sometimes the answer is nothing, I'm good. And that's fine. You're still that person, like a parent calling and saying, so what are you going to do when you graduate?
Right.
So we're keeping people focused on their goals. And if they do need something, we're giving them permission to ask. And sometimes I think that's another issue for those of us in finance, is I would argue that most people who have gone into finance are smart people.
Right.
Yeah. And we like to be right. When debits equal credits, when the balance sheet balances, we're happy. But that's not always the way it works in real life in achieving goals. So sometimes I think that people in finance have a harder time saying, I need help.
Yeah.
That we figure, let's just put more effort into it, more time into it, and we won't step up and say, I need help to achieve this, which is where I think we lead into problems with timeliness on meeting goals, is that we keep thinking, I can do this. I just need more time. And we don't want to admit, I can't. So you have a deadline coming up in 2 days. And we just think, if I put my head down and I work really hard, I'll be able to get this done. And that's when everything else happens. All the other things blow up, and you thought you were going to have 6 hours that you could dedicate to it, and maybe you've got an hour and a half. Then we bring work home. Things happen at home. We don't get around to it. And then we kind of slink into work 2 days later going, I don't have this done.
Yeah.
So giving people make it safe for people to ask for help. And I think one of the best ways you can do that as a leader is to ask for help yourself.
Do you think that, because I think that, sometimes when we talk about kind of how to lead better within organizations, I get sometimes have CPAs, CFOs say to me that they don't feel like they have the power, they don't really feel like they have the ability to really be an agent of change within the organization. And so I think what you're talking about, you're talking about a degree of vulnerability You're talking about someone saying, "Hey, I need help." At least in in the world of finance, I agree with you. I think that that I think we somehow in our brain we kind of feel like we don't need anybody else. We can will it through. If we just put in one more hour or something. And what would you say? How exactly do we create an environment where we can be an agent of change? What would you say to those folks that are kind of feeling powerless within the organization to really sort of make that type of a culture? Because I think ultimately, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about culture change.
Mm-hmm. Two things. I think first, talking about that vulnerability. Yeah. Sometimes we think, if I raise my hand and say I can't do it, that makes me less than.
Yeah.
Neuroscience, however, would tell you build relationships when you admit your vulnerability. You're demonstrating to somebody else that you're human. And that builds a stronger relationship, that builds trust with your team. So one of the ways we can do that is in a meeting with our team. So we're talking about a project that we're working on. As the leader, you might say, you know what, this is not my area of expertise. Can somebody help me with this? Doesn't have to be over something big. Could be over making a spreadsheet look pretty, color coding it. Right. Helping put some slides together. But just asking your team for help and doing it publicly lets everybody know that if it's okay for you to ask for help from your team, they now know it's okay to go in the other direction. And now, if we talk about how you make changes in your organization, the trick that I've always used is to look at the organization's mission statement. This is what the organization wants to be when it grows up, what it's trying to achieve. So if I notice something that I know could be improved, sometimes these things show up, particularly for there are some CPAs, CMAs, people in finance who are very big picture thinkers, and they quickly see, we could make this better. Those that are focused, sometimes it's internal audit staff, is they're looking at business process improvement. So when you see something that could be better, and then you raise the issue and somebody goes, no, we're not changing anything. This is the way we've always done it. We're fine. That's my least favorite phrase.
Yeah, those are dangerous words.
Yes, because, my question when somebody says that is, explain to me now how today is the same as 10 years ago when we started doing it this way. But I think if you can take your idea of what could be improved and then figure out how to justify it in terms of the organization's mission statement, it's really hard for somebody to say, no, we don't want to make the organization better.
Good point.
And the second way is to break it down one level down. The person that you're trying to get to approve this idea, find out it's kind of a backwards question. What are they most afraid of?
Yeah.
Leaders are always one mistake away from failure. And every one of us has our biggest fear. So if you can frame your idea in a way that protects that person from their fear, then again, it's hard to say no. It's often we say no to any new idea because we go, oh, I don't know what this is going to look like. It's risky. So we've got to offset the risk with the positive value.
I think that's very well said. I mean, I think that especially too, you're right. I mean, anything that kind of lines up with the mission, I mean, that's going to be a tough one for anyone to overturn. And you're right. I mean, I think trying to figure out what exactly it is that's sort of driving that response, that no response from the other side. I mean, I think that's key. I mean, that's imperative to sort of figuring out kind of what we need to do.
If you were bring it back around to our concept of goals,
yeah,
the other thing to do to change your culture is to think about a pilot program.
Okay.
Like your goal is that vision for the future. Well, what if we did one small step, a pilot program? So we're breaking that big thing down into something smaller. So you might do a pilot with one group of people. So for example, in the CFO role, you may want to adopt some new expense reporting software.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody says, oh, that's, we have 1,000 employees. This is huge. Well, if you can explain the benefit to the organization, how it will make this other person look good, and promote a pilot project and say, I understand where you're coming from. I see what the concerns are, what the risks are. How about we try? Most people are okay with trying something. It's that commitment to something big that can be a problem. But if you say, how about we try with our department?
Mm-hmm.
50 people. Let's see how that goes. And again, that's breaking it down into a small goal. When we have success with that small goal, it's easier to say, okay, this worked with our department. Let's roll it out to another department of maybe 300 people. And we keep making progress towards that big vision of the future.
I think that's well said. I mean, and you're right. I mean, it's if you say, hey, let's try. I think that's key phrasing because most people I think are at least amenable to trying, or at least they want to be. And so, so they might sort of take something on that maybe they wouldn't otherwise.
And there's interesting phrasing that you can use.
Yeah.
To say, are you open to trying? Yeah. And it's really amazing because nobody wants to reply, nope, I'm closed.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that's exactly it, is that most of us, I think all of us, most of us, maybe all of us want to be sort of at least open to new ideas, or at least have the appearance of it. And so,
exactly. So when you phrase it that way, would you be open to, or can you keep an open mind as we talk about this?
Then you're on. Then you're on. What sort of changes would you want to see kind of within the profession in this area of goal setting? I mean, if we were to give Jennifer, if we were to give you a magic wand, what sort of changes would you want to see in this area of goal setting for us as CPAs? Where would you like to see our industry move towards?
I think there are two questions I would ask before we set any goal to make it much more achievable for all of us, which would be, the first question would be, why? Mm-hmm. Why should I do this? Now, the why needs to be a WIFT. What's in it for them? WIIFT, not just this is good for the organization. We're quick to say we need to meet our KPIs, but the KPIs are typically for the organization. What's in it for that individual? So why? The second question is why now? And often the best answer to that question would be to explain the bad things that will happen if we don't do something now. Because neuroscience will tell you our brains are hardwired to avoid pain.
Yeah.
We know we're supposed to eat right. It's when we get diagnosed as being diabetic that suddenly we decide it's time to eat right. Because we know if we don't, we're going to have to start taking medication or something like that. So you can inspire people by explaining the downside of not starting now. What will we miss?
I think that's a great way to approach this, and I think that that's a great vision for the folks that are out there. You know, before we're setting goals, ask why now. You know, especially when we're asking that why question, make sure that you're putting it in such a way where you're going to connect it to the person and help them to see what is in it for them. And I think that that's very well said. Jennifer, I think that we could probably go on this topic for, you know, several more days. But if folks want to know more about you, if they want to connect with you about this topic or many of the other things that you speak on, what would be the best way for them to do that?
They can reach out to me. My email address is jelder@sustainablecfo.com. Probably the best way to reach me. Sustainablecfo.com is my website, so they can also go look there. And if anybody's got questions or wants some help or guidance, please feel free. I'd be happy to work with you.
There you go, folks. Jennifer Elder is a great resource, sustainablecfo.com, or thesustainablecfo.com.
No, sustainable,
is that right?
Not the.
Okay, so just sustainablecfo.com, and we will drop that in the notes to this podcast, and yeah, so I think that that would be a great way for folks to connect. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for being here on Accountable. I think this is a great topic and certainly a good topic, especially now, you know, people are starting to wind down from the busy tax season and the busy audit season. And so now's a great time to be setting goals. And so I just think this is a fantastic topic. So thank you so much for being on.
Oh, thank you very much, Dave. It was a pleasure and thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you to all of you for tuning in here this week for Accountable, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Accountable. Be sure to subscribe for more interviews and insights from today's business leaders.